Eloise, stop smirking.
Hi everybody, welcome to our webinar, which is called Reflections from Sunderland, Creating an Impact on Mental Health through Community Learning. So I'm one of the people who works at Sunderland City Council, who is running our pilot project, and I have with me Sharon from Impact Northeast, who we're going to do a little bit of a question and answer session with to talk about how things went with year one and a little bit of a look forward. So Impact was created by Sharon, so we thought we'd sort of find out a little bit about that, and as one of our partners from year one, just tell us a little bit about the kind of courses that you actually were running for us.
Well, hi everyone. Hopefully I'll get this right. A part of Impact Northeast, we were created to support families to reduce social and health inequalities through using the provision of training, one-to-one counselling, mentoring and support, and using holistic approaches for families to kind of try and get them to engage more within their community and with themselves and their families. And as a part of the year one, we run two courses which use a holistic whole brain approach. God, I can't think. I'm never stuck for words, am I, Eloise?
Not normally.
Which really is an alternative to counselling to support them to engage their whole brain in terms of when people have things like anxiety, as we know, they tend to just use one path and one thought process. So it was basically looking at how we could get our learners to exercise all parts of the brain and use them to engage to make their mental health better. So a part of it was to increase their social and emotional intelligence in order to try and make them more aware of things around them and themselves. And we felt that this methodology supported the development and improved their coping skills and their communication. And as a part of that, we endeavoured to provide the longevity of support needed and invested the time in order to help create more social impact for more sustainable outcomes, which meant that they didn't just attend a training course, they got follow-on support from ourselves, from our volunteers, which may have been one-to-one counselling or one-to-one family support to try and help them move to a better place. The courses we delivered an anxiety and depression awareness course and a course which was called CHAMP. And these courses use the above methodology of using a whole brain approach to enable the learners to understand their mind, their body and the events and triggers, and exploring the root causes and how to build a scaffolding for their body and mind, which we thought was very important because there's lots of courses that go away and tell them, you know, this is what you need to do and this is what you do, but to actually understand the psychological effect and the causes, our learners felt really useful. Some of the outcomes that we recorded included around about 90% of our learners has improved mental health assessment scores throughout the duration of the time with us, whether that being just on the course and also the follow-up support that they received from us, which had a massive impact on not just the learners but their families as well, because they were going home and they were in a better place, so in turn that meant that the family were in a better place, which had a knock-on effect in terms of what we call a ripple effect throughout the family. Nearly all of our learners who went on the courses engaged in one-to-one personal therapy, which was for the first time for some of them that they was ever engaged in personal therapy. They understood what it was for. So it allowed them to not only just use the course and reflect on it, but to then help change those fixed patterns that they've maybe come across that they didn't have time to work on in the training course. And I suppose then it got to the root, the one-to-one therapy supported them to get to some of the root causes of why their mental health was the way it was and what they were struggling with. And then a high percentage of our learners also moved on to more of the courses that we were running, because in conjunction with the mental health pilot, we were also running FACL courses, which is the community learning courses in Sunderland. So they moved on to them, and then some of them went into volunteering within the community or with ourselves. Sometimes they came along as support or witness sessions within the training courses, which then helped them to feel a little bit more like they were giving back, or they were kind of coming along and it was reinforcing the learning that they'd had the first time round.
Sharon, can you go into a little bit more detail about what makes a good tutor in these situations, sort of thinking about things like lived experience?
Well, for me, a lot of things make a good tutor, and I think for us, for the type of courses we were delivering, we only used tutors who were qualified counsellors and qualified trainers. And I know not everyone has that luxury, but for us, we thought, well, we were delivering mental health courses, so it was really important that the people that were getting that support were getting it from people that were trained, not just in a tutor kind of teacher role, but also in a clinical way. So it meant that they were held during those courses, because we were delivering anxiety and depression courses, and we thought that, you know, those tutors would be able to be a lot more kind of nurturing and hold those learners through that process. And also, as an organisation, we just then felt that those courses would deliver safely and correctly. And speaking for myself as one of those counsellors and stroke trainers, I use a lot of personal experience. So when we're looking at content, when we're looking at what we're delivering in the course, I use a lot of personal experience. So that personal experience allows me to provide examples about my well-being and my mental health and my struggles, which meant that, you know, people were allowed to hear my journey, which supported them, and it made them feel more comfortable and less nervous, and gave them a platform to explore their own journey. Because as I was giving childhood examples of my life, they were able to kind of then come on board. So it meant they felt at ease. So they weren't just having someone standing up there who they thought was, you know, a mental health worker who was kind of preaching to them about kind of how to manage their mental health. So for me, I suppose I can only speak from my personal experience of what they said was good about kind of what I delivered. And I suppose using counsellors and mental health workers as stroke trainers means that they've got the knowledge and the background to be able to support these learners. You know, because there's lots of courses out there that do kind of flower arranging, that do gardening, that do the kind of softer side that enable them to kind of integrate back into the community. But using that kind of methodology in terms of then looking at how we get them to understand, I suppose that for us, what made me choose the tutors that I did was that they could deliver that safely and hold them, I suppose, is one of the ways that we can kind of say that it made it trustworthy, that they felt safe, that because they were looking at their mental health, they felt safe with people that understood what mental health was, instead of just somebody we brought in that was a qualified tutor or teacher with no mental health background, I suppose.
From sort of recruitment side of things, did you find people reluctant to come forward to engage in courses? How did you work around that?
We found some learners were very apprehensive, which is only natural when you think about mental health and people who are suffering, either suffered long-term mental health or whether it just be something new to them. It's quite scary. So, you know, some learners have tried everything and had resorted to everything. You know, you had the saying of, well, I've tried everything, nothing works, I am the way I am. And these clients had a mindset which, you know, they couldn't engage the whole brain. So when we were trying to show them about kind of using a whole brain approach, it did have a big impact. And we, you know, if they didn't want to come along to a group session, if they were too frightened or apprehensive, we asked them to come along on a one-to-one basis, and that one-to-one basis gave us a stepping stone to be able to kind of then get them engaged, let them see what we were trying to deliver and how we were trying to support them. And then we progressed them slowly to the point where they then did engage. And I've got a quote from one of our learners when I've gone through kind of our quotes and stuff to try and support some of the work we've done. And she struggled for more than 20 years. When she first came along to Impact North East, it was a last resort to do one of the courses we were offering. At that point, she was all ready to take her own life and just give in. And she says, because of the scores on the sheet, she couldn't attend the course. She said, so they offered me one-to-one support. I completed 10 weeks one-to-one support, and to my surprise, I started to feel slightly different. And then after 20 weeks, she said she couldn't believe that she'd started to think differently for the first time and for as long as she could remember. And then one of the things she said, once she was in a bit of a better place, we were running the last course of the kind of the batch that we were running, and she was able to take part in it because her scores were in the right place in order to. And she said that, you know, we didn't give up on it, and they didn't send me away, and now that I have my life back, and I'm getting well each day, which meant that, you know, at the start where she didn't want to, and then by the end of it, she's kind of now an advocate for what we do, and that you can change the way you think. So I think sometimes those quotes are a little bit better than me just sitting there kind of blowing comments, if that makes sense.
Oh, thank you, Sharon, because it does give a little bit more of a real life picture sometimes when it's a little bit of a case study. Do you find the learners are reluctant at first to sort of share some of their stories?
Oh God. Sorry, go on. I was going to say, yeah, definitely. I mean, they're very reluctant. They're very reluctant to open up. They don't know who they're going to trust, you know. And what we try and do is we don't put any pressure on, which is why our courses are written from, I suppose, a tutor's perspective when we're trying to support them through that. And at no point throughout the course do we kind of force them to, you know, engage. Do we get them to bring their experiences to the table? We ask them to join in if they can. Some of them do, some of them don't. And just as and when they're ready, they can participate in the lessons, but they're structured so that a lot of the personal experiences are ours as tutors, or examples from case studies or videos, which means that they feel safe. But, you know, if they don't, some of the learners, they start off where, you know, one of them has said, and one of the quotes I've got is, it got easier to engage in, that I wasn't going to be judged and that there was no pressure, but also that we as tutors opened up and shared our experiences, which made her realise that mental health isn't just affecting them, it isn't just affecting them as an individual, but it's, you know, it's everybody experiences it at some point. And that, you know, for me to stand there and share my experiences of my mental health, and that I'm still standing there and I'm still doing what I'm doing, gave her the ability to change. And I always use a saying that it's just like learning a new skill. Learning to build a scaffold in your mind is just like learning a new job, learning a new skill. You just need the tools to do it. And that's one of the things she kind of took on. And she, you know, some of them don't engage, they wait until afterwards and then they'll come and have one-to-one sessions, but that engagement's taken place, whether it be there or, you know, a bit later on.
I do like that scaffolding analogy. Does it make any difference, do you think, the venue for where the learning takes place?
I think it does. I think sometimes some of the learners, like when we look at the geographical area in Sunderland, we know some of our learners who want to take part in our course won't travel across the other side of the city. So we always try and make sure that we deliver our sessions across the city, whether that be, you know, we do at least within the north, the east, the south, and we might not be able to do it in each kind of district in terms of looking at how many there are in Sunderland, but we try and make sure we try and deliver, because some of them, you know, they don't go out the front door, they might go to school and back. So, you know, a lot of our learners, we kind of look at where we can engage them and we ask them, and we try and make sure that we fit our delivery around where our core kind of participants are feeling comfortable. And it's like a safe haven. It's like when your mum says don't cross the road when you're little, and you look left and right, and shall I cross, shall I not cross? And it's just the same for some of our learners. They won't go across to the next district, they won't come across the river. So it's just being mindful of that, I suppose.
Very true. It's certainly something we get right across with all of our community learning, that it has to be very much done to the different areas. What about the impacts that the learners experience from doing the course? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Some of the learners, they do start off a bit anxious when they sit in the classroom. So we provide initial one-to-one training on that basis, and we'll slowly move them through just to make sure their experience with us is right. You know, I always say, my shoes are not going to fit you, so why would I expect a learning process to fit every learner? So as a part of our ethos as a company, it's about taking those individuals and being able, you know, some companies don't have that luxury, but we've got it in the basis of our ethos that each individual matters. So knowing that what they experience from the minute they walk in is what we want them to take forward. So when we look at some of the things that, you know, those learners have done, some of their experiences, we kind of know that, you know, even putting a note on a post-it note to put on the wall at the beginning of the course has been too much for some of our learners. They've broke down before they even put a post-it note on the board just about what they want to get off the course. And then you've got some who come in who, I'm come here for me mum, my dad, my uncle, my brother, I want to learn more about it. And so the difference in kind of how they experience it is vast, as you can imagine. So, you know, if I look at the whole pilot as a whole, some of the things that we've looked at when we've done our returns to yourselves in terms of looking at how and what we've seen them progress and notice the learners' confidence and participation in those, some of them move from one-to-one training through to group sessions. So that's massive in itself that, they've gone from one-to-one into a classroom setting. Some of the learners who were too emotional to put post-it notes on the board, they've started engaging and sharing their experiences, and then they've come on following courses after that. So that showed massive movements for those people. Some of them, we have some of our family support workers coming along and our support tutors to sit in the class with them because they won't come by themselves. And then by the second course or by the end of it, they've said, I don't need you to come now. Some learners have registered on more of our courses and they've gone on to volunteering. We've got a couple of the learners who've moved through our courses who are now doing volunteering with ourselves. And some of them have started volunteering in school PTAs, so we've got them involved in that. And in some of the local charity shops. And then on the back of one of the courses that we run over in Southwick, a group of mums actually started a self-support group up to support themselves. So looking at those progressions, we kind of sort of, I suppose it's a bit feeling overwhelmed that you've kind of looked and you've supported to where they are. And some of the biggest results we've had, we work with quite a lot of families who are in the social care system. And some of them have made massive changes in their lives, changed their lives around that. They've ended up getting their children back. So, looking at those progressions and looking at their experience with us, you couldn't really, for me, you cannot buy that they've, from something that you've delivered in such a short space of time, has made such an impact on them that, to have those kind of results, you just kind of makes you secretly smile inside, I suppose.
Excellent. So there's lots of sort of impacts I think you got from there. There were some really nice stories came out. How do you see community learning supporting people who are struggling with their mental health?
I see it being a big part of it because some of the things that we've had from some of our learners, some of the quotes we've had in terms of looking at, we work with a lot of families who are disadvantaged. We work in communities where they don't engage with a lot of people, they don't engage with a lot of services. There's a lot of lack of trust in some of the areas we work in. And as a part of that, having that there, some of the families that we've helped, one of them has said that, it helped her understand how and why a panic attacks happen, how to find ways to break that cycle, and that it really helped to get her head around the fact that it's an illness and not a personal weakness, and that having the support and our drive has made a massive difference to herself. So without that community learning, some of these families and some of these people wouldn't have had the opportunity because they either don't meet the criteria to get mainstream support in terms of looking at what's available through the NHS, or they just won't go because for whatever reason, they've got so many barriers that they wouldn't dream of going. So for us, without being a part of the mental health pilot, some of these families, and some of these individuals wouldn't have had the support. So that community learning for us is massive in terms of catching the people and having that safety net that, without it, a couple of the other quotes was that one of the mums brought her sister and her mum with her. And she said, today, finally, they understand what life's like for me, and I understand myself much better and how to help myself. And I didn't really get it before, but my home is a better place and my children are happy and less anxious. And that's a family. So in terms of the importance of the community learning, I think it accesses and gives a platform for people that don't fit criterias or wouldn't necessarily engage in mainstream support, I suppose, because of those barriers. And I feel that it is invested in community learning, supporting people with on that basis is a good provision, and it does provide a platform, I suppose, for the statutory services that are already there, the services that are in place. It also gives, I suppose, a passing down. So if somebody's there and they're coming out of recovery or they're just finishing in the recovery college, where do they go when they go back into the community? What can they participate in? So it's a good platform to be able to have those links, to be able to filter people through so that there is another avenue for those families. to kind of support them with. And I don't know, I think that's it. And I've got some more quotes, but obviously I could give you quotes till the end of the year.
So that's all really interesting, Sharon. Can I also get you to talk a little bit about the fact that in year one you spent a lot of time working through school settings, and I think it would be interesting if we can touch on a little bit about how the head teachers found that, with it being offered to the parents of the pupils attending, and also looking at it from whether you felt that that actually integrated into the wider culture and was something that was supportive for the schools as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, we offer, as you know, a part of one of the things we offer as a company is in school-based counselling services, which sometimes schools feel quite lost on where to send families. You know, if they don't meet strengthening families criteria, if, you know, the teachers aren't really qualified on a mental health basis, so what do they do with these families? They support them the best they can. So teachers are being really supportive, and head teachers are excited about the training. They've also asked whether we can deliver that training for them, because the families have kind of said, oh, it would be really useful. And currently the schools are really struggling under the high volume of parents who display poor mental health and the effects that has in the classroom. So not only are the teachers trying to teach, they're also dealing with a lot of issues the children are bringing into school, which are sometimes not their mental health issues, but the after effects, I suppose, and the ripple effect of what their parents are struggling with does have a detrimental effect on the classroom. So, you know, whilst some of the children will develop similar symptoms, once we start that approach of supporting the whole family unit, then it's making the schools a little less stretched on resources. You know, they've got somewhere to point them to. We send them all our things that we're running so they can run them. And they're able to offer something new, which is offered in a safe and familiar environment. So the parents will drop the little ones off and they'll come in and do the training course. You know, so it's kind of, the environment's safe, they feel comfortable. And a couple of the quotes I've got from the schools, one of them had said, obviously with Ofsted and the government now suggesting that schools take a whole family approach to wellbeing and mental health, and obviously looking at how far their school budgets can stretch, this has really helped in terms of what we offer as an additional support to their families, even if we're not working in that school. It's enabled them to kind of, I suppose, support families who come for them for help, but they've got nowhere to send them. So not only are they able to support their families in the wider community, they're also being able to kind of meet some of those targets in terms of what's being expected of them as a school by Ofsted and the government. And one of the teachers had said, having the resource in school allows us to offer parents practical support for themselves, and usually teachers would be supporting the families with their mental health and wellbeing and making referrals to strengthening families, and now they have an option and the parents have responded as well. So the schools that we were in have asked us, can we go back in and deliver that? And on the back of this, we've also adapted some of the material that we offer, and we offer child-friendly mental health awareness course, and we go into the classes and we deliver that to the year 6 and 5 to give them some understanding of what mental health is and how they can cope with that, and things which support them. So I suppose, you know, for the school, the schools have been really kind of welcoming and have asked us what are we running next and when are we running it and can they book it. So, you know, for us it's kind of a no-win situation.
Thank you, Sharon. Can I take that as a pause point to sort of stop and ask if any of the audience have got any questions for Sharon or I?
Yeah, I have got a couple of questions. It's really interesting because it's sort of, we were talking about in the earlier webinar about completion of assessment forms. I was really interested when you said you sort of embedded the research collection and the assessment scores, Sharon, into, is that embedding it into the sort of feedback to learners? Is that right? Am I getting that right?
I mean, we support learners to understand where their starting scores were, and we discuss that with them, because then it allows us to evaluate whether they need any further support.
Yeah.
So if we feel based on the scores that, you know, they would benefit from some of the services that we offer or the additional services, then we'll have that conversation. We'll kind of explain where the scores are and, you know, look at things that they're struggling with, and then we kind of move through that process, and then we'll kind of, at the end, when we do the results, we talk about them with them as well, so their final score, so they understand the movement. So sometimes people can't see, and they'll be like, nothing's changed and everything's the same, and then when they see the scores, they're kind of like, oh, and I never realised that, and it kind of then makes them realise that they have had changes, there has been movement, they've had less panic attacks, you know, they've got involved more. So we find it an important part of the process to kind of share that with them, and they're not just being told that they're this, that, the other. That whole holistic approach to understanding it is, you know, where we kind of sit with it.
Yeah, and it seemed to me that you spent such a lot of time with individuals, and that maybe is part of the answer, because from what you were saying, you might follow somebody through and offer them various options, so you've always got an option for them, which is fantastic. Yeah. And do people self-refer, or do you generally go out and recruit in the ways that you were talking about, like thinking of particular target audiences like you did with schools? How does that work?
Both, really. We're kind of quite proactive, so for us, we kind of want everyone to know about it. If we're doing something, we want to make sure that everyone knows it's available, because I think one of the biggest things is a lot of people will kind of say, oh, I didn't know that was happening, I didn't know that was there. And the only way we can kind of counteract that is saying, actually, we're here. So we go to events in schools, we go to sports days, we go to community days, we go to carnivals, and we put up a stall, we have our information, we register people if they want to, you know, they just fill out a form if they want to leave their details and tell us what they're interested in, and then we follow that up. So it's a lot of manpower, it's a lot of resource, but, you know, at the end of the day, it means that people know we're there, we know what we're doing, and that's what we kind of, and we're all people at the end of the day, so we enjoy it, so kind of do anything else.
Sharon, you're also quite good with your social media as well. You do a lot of promotion with your Facebook and your Twitter accounts. I don't know if that leads to many referrals, but I know you're always very good at shining a light and putting out the positive messages.
I mean, we've got there's 3 or 4 staff who've got access to all the different social media accounts, so if one of us isn't busy, one of us will kind of share something, or, you know, so there's quite a few of us, so it's not the fact that we've got this precious you know, sitting there saying, this is my precious little account and only I can do that. So we kind of try and involve the staff as much as possible to put that message out there. We kind of find events and we put them on the boards, and we use things like Monkey Survey and MailChimp to send out around the organisation. So we're kind of we do like to put it out there. I think the only bits of media we haven't managed to tap is kind of local news radios, which is kind of our next step. Obviously one of the areas we identified was through that is that there's quite a lot of people needing support in the LGBT community. So we've currently spoke to LGBT radio and seeing if they want one of our LGBT counsellors to go on and do some chats and stuff, trying to get that community within all the different communities. So we work right across the board, whether that be in the BME community, in the schools. There's just there's no limit really when all you want to do is help people. You know, people can sit there and say we've tried, but if we, you know, there's always a way we can get the message out there, then we just keep plugging away.
Thanks. Yeah.
I think my question is around you were talking about your recruitment from schools, and from my experience of teaching in family learning, it's very hard to attract the dads.
Yes.
Have you had any dads come on the course?
We've had quite a few. Some of them will come in support to bring their partners, or, you know, bring their wives along because they don't want to come by themselves. We, in a couple of areas in our kind of in the hard target areas within Sunderland, we've had probably not as much as many males as we would like, but we've had probably a fair few. So it is harder to engage them, but I think it's because they don't like the whole, I think they've engaged in the courses because the idea of counselling is something that, you know, that's airy-fairy, that's not for a macho man. But those who've engaged have really enjoyed it, and they've kind of had a ways with some of the others. But yeah, it is one of those areas we've been trying to work with some of the men's groups, some of the dads groups, like the fishing groups, the men's sheds groups and things like that, just trying to kind of get them engaged and understand what we're offering. So it's, you know, with it, obviously it being so targeted within kind of year one, we've got kind of plans if we're successful in year two that we're, you know, to try and target those areas. So fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Any other further questions? Nope. Well, thank you all very much for listening to our presentation at Sunderland. I hope you enjoyed it and got some useful things out of it.
Thank you, very interesting. Thank you, Sharon and Eloise.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Now.